Hi everyone, this is Anu the Honda Mäkinen, and welcome back to another random Heatcast. And today on the Heatcast, I'll be talking about a topic which I've been thinking about turning into a video for a while now, but I've honestly just haven't been able to commit to actually recording a specific video for this. So I decided I was just going to do this kind of casually as a Heatcast, but I didn't want it to be just audio. You might remember recently we did a little sort of video podcast with Kaiser with a little slideshow running in the background. I thought it was a cute idea. Our video settings were unfortunately not quite correct. They should be a bit better this time around. But yeah, so because I decided I was going to do this topic as just kind of like a casual podcast. I'll do a minimal editing on it because I just want to get my thoughts out there, and I didn't want it to do too much like hard work on this. But it is a topic that I've been thinking about that I wanted to really discuss because it relates to He-Man, and and the topic of today's podcast is character bloat in He-Man, and this is a problem that exists in almost every version of He-Man, including the original Filmation show, which is my personal favorite of these. And I'll be discussing, first of all, how this problem manifests itself in each of the different versions of He-Man and She-Ra that have come along over the years. And I will also talk a little bit about why it matters. Why is it something that bothers me? Why do because the thing is, like, no matter how good each He-Man or She-Ra has been, well, the Filmation He-Man is my personal favorite. But, I will state that, the later He-Mans have definitely done improvements in the storytelling department and have made their own choices. Not always choices that I've been a big fan of. I think She-Ra and the Princess of Power is probably my second favorite He-Man show. I'm also a big fan of the live action movie, but it's kind of difficult to, measure that up against, an entire series. And after that, it becomes a little bit harder for me to rank. I like the CGI He-Man show, but it has its own set of issues that I will talk about. I kind of like the new adventure. I really kind of fell in love with the new Adventures of He-Man from doing the 60-second He-Man reviews. I still have not gotten into the Mike Young Productions He-Man that much, but I have discovered that Mattel's official YouTube channel does in fact have the entire series, or at least the first season on there. So I think I'm going to at least, give that at some point a watch. I just haven't committed to it really. I rewatched the Stratos Bozov episode just recently because I kind of had a pretty fond memory of that. Anywho, let's finally get to the topic. So, what is character bloat? What does it mean? And how does it affect these different shows? Well, I think you can probably guess a character bloat is basically the issue where a show keeps introducing more and more supporting characters and over time also tries to feature those supporting characters in more and more episodes. And on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the original one, this was really not so much of a problem during season one. Because during season one, there was actually a very small core cast. And I think for the first third of the first season, reminding everybody that the seasons on the Filmation He-Man show were quite long, 65 episodes each. There was actually they actually were very reserved about using characters. Like there were actually quite a lot of episodes. This is something that I've actually thought about even making a video out of. I haven't really thought of it, but there were actually quite a lot of episodes where it was really just He-Man and Battle Cat going on a mission, or just He-Man and Teela, or sometimes He-Man, Duncan, and Orko just going off on a little mission together. And you really only periodically did you ever get like a really big battle scene with all the He-Man allies together. But the core cast, if you will, on the heroes and villains sides were introduced like they were introduced already in the pilot. So on the heroes side, the core cast is, He-Man, Cringer slash Battle Cat, Duncan, Orko, Teela, and then whenever they're needed, Stratos and Ram Man. And then on the villain side, it's Skeletor and any bunch of the original six Council of Evil. Usually, Beastman is somewhere in there, but you will might have like just Triclops and Evil Lyn, or Evil Lyn and Beastman, or Beastman and Trapjaw. And Merman actually kind of tended to go off on his own, more or less. Then very late into season one, we had Clawful enter the cast as well as a regular or sort of semi-regular cast member. And then during season two, all of a sudden, Skeletor got a bunch of new henchmen, and then the He-Man got a bunch of new allies. And this is one of the reasons I've always, I've always had a bit of a problem with He-Man season two, because season one very clearly established this core cast of characters, and now during season two, they weren't focusing so much on Ram Man and Stratos. Ram Man actually got quite a few episode appearances still. But then, Stratos kind of fell into the background because Buzov came in. And then we had some weird randos. Cyclone is like one of my all-time least favorites. Like an absolutely meaningless character. Just shows up randomly in a couple of episodes and never even has dialogue. Mechaneck shows up a couple of times. He had a dialogue. He even had like his own highlight episode. And one of the only good supporting characters that I really like was Roboto. You can see my review of Happy Birthday Roboto. But yeah, so and then on the villain side, all of a sudden we have weirdos like Webstore showing up, and but then we did get Whiplash and Cobra Khan, who were actually really good, villains. Very late in the season, also Spycore, but then. I've talked about this on the Skeletor henchman ranking video if you're interested. But basically, we kind of get into this awkward kind of musical chair situation where they plucked one character out and put another one in its place, and that's really kind of questionable. And you know why they did it. I know why they did it. They did it because we needed to sell toys. That was the thing. Like Mattel was pushing those toys. He-Man had been a huge success. Obviously, they were going to follow suit. And unfortunately, this problem then followed Filmation into She-Ra. Now, during the first third of She-Ra, the Princess of Power, we actually do sort of establish a kind of core cast. There's She-Ra or / Adora, Spirit, Queen Angela, Madame Raz, Bo Glimmer, and those very early She-Ra episodes still stayed with that very closely knit pack of characters, and it was actually the Horde that had just kind of had a weird ensemble of bad guys that there was no real consistency, except Shadow Weaver would often show up. Then when it was finally established, the whole gag with Mantenna was always kind of there. But Catra then started appearing very sporadically through the series. And this causes the number one problem why I always have, as much as, She-Ra, the Filmation She-Ra really kind of is like an extension of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I would kind of look at She-Ra almost like a season 3 and 4 of the original Filmation He-Man, because of it uses so much of the same visual language and some of the same music. And, He-Man characters regularly do cameo appearances on the show. But a serious problem with She-Ra to me has always just been that after that initial run of episodes, it became a fucking free-for-all. You would just have some random ally of She-Ra for an episode. Or sometimes She-Ra didn't have any allies. And that was kind of the core problem, really. It felt like you didn't get that same core cast built up the same way as in He-Man. And that makes it a little less special when Glimmer or Bo appears in the original Filmation show. I need to stress this, because this is a problem that they luckily, I think, actually solved in the Netflix version. The Netflix version is vastly improved as far as the character dynamics are going. It has its own problems, and like I said, the only version of He-Man that actually doesn't suffer from character bloat at all is actually the live action movie. But that was just because they had to streamline it because it was a movie. They couldn't focus on so many characters, but they actually picked I think all the good ones. For the hero side, He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Teela. And we did kind of lose Orko, but we kind of got Gwildor instead, so it wasn't like that bad. And on the villain side, it's Skeletor, Evelyn, Beastman, and then just some randos. Like, but you got the three big ones there. So the motion picture, it made the right choices there. The problem in the New Adventures of He-Man, there's the episode Galactic Guardians. I talked a little bit about it there. The Galactic Guardians were never very well established. The only ones that were at the very start were Hydron and Flipshot, and then they also just disappear from the show for very long periods of time. They're not like treated as like central characters, even though they're like the stars of the first episode. And that always felt really fucking weird to me. I always really wondered about that. By the way, I'm looking at the slideshow and I'm missing a few pictures. So where was I? Yeah, so the problem with that is that the Galactic Guardians really did not develop as characters early on. Like in a lot of those very early episodes, you just saw them in those spaceships or shooting at everything. In stark contrast to the mutants. The mutants were established like much better, much more organically, very early on, and that's why they were some of my favorite characters from the very get-go. But I think there is just a general problem. It's just a big cast of characters. It's really difficult to, and it's very difficult to focus on narratively in that. A lot of these support characters just come off very weak, but then like later on in the New Adventures, they were able to build up the characters a little bit better. So there's that. I do think that they did a good job with so some of the New Adventures characters over time did become pretty good characters. Like Mara is a good example. Mara actually evolved a lot as a character. Spinwit really evolved as a character. But that's the difference. Like they slowly, gradually kind of built them up. But it's weird. But it took a long while. In She-Ra and the Princess of Power, my big gripe with that show had always been that the princesses were kind of haphazardly introduced, and then during season 2, it became apparent that the showrunners had no idea what to really do with them. Which is why season 2 is a bit hard for me to kind of look back on. I mean, I kind of like, because it was a bit of a one-offy kind of season, but She-Ra and the Princess of Power was clearly a more character-driven show, and that's where it actually becomes a lot more of a problem, because New Adventures of He-Man, and really starting from the motion picture, like the He-Man shows have at least tried to, have some sense of continuity, some sense that we're building up towards something, and unfortunately. And when you don't treat your characters as important, when you don't give them enough time to like build and grow, it causes a problem of, okay, why should I care about this character? That's the real big problem I have with the New Adventures of He-Man's cast, because they just kind of show up for the battle scenes, but I don't know who you are. I don't care who you are. Like, show me more Hydron and Flipshot. They were in the first episode. I know who these guys are. So, that's the problem. It creates a lack of familiarity, and so that's kind of the core issue. Now, Mike Young Productions even, I think, slightly highlights this problem, but I haven't watched the episodes enough, so I don't know if this was as egregious, but I have this impression in my mind that Mike Young Productions spent a lot more time establishing the characters, but it went into the kind of like the hard extreme opposite direction, that they started giving them all origin episodes, and I think that's also kind of a bad move. But like I said, I haven't had time to rewatch those episodes, so maybe because the problem there is, like, if you focus too much on the support cast, then the main cast becomes unimportant. But like I said, I haven't really stopped and rewatched those Mike Young Productions. If He-Man is actually still a core player in those episodes, and don't get me wrong, like, if you have a show that has a lot of characters, then inevitably there's going to be moments where the main cast is kind of, out of focus, because if you never focus on the support characters, like, that's not good either. So, but that's really where I'm getting at. So I need to kind of think about that. Now on actually now that we're on the CGI He-Man show, like the CGI He-Man show actually didn't have this character bloat problem that much because and yeah, oh, sorry, on the She-Ra and the Princess of Power. Yeah, so, well, like I said, on the She-Ra and the Princess of Power, I will say that eventually the showrunners kind of fixed the problem by refocusing on that core cast of Adora, Bo, and Glimmer, and they did a much better job. The Netflix She-Ra show did a much better job of establishing those characters. I think they actually had a little bit of problem with Catra initially. Like if you've seen my like videos and podcasts of me talking about the She-Ra Netflix show as was happening, I got very frustrated with Catra. I felt like that character seemed so directionless at some point, and then they just randomly uh, made her and Adora into a romantic couple. I thought that was a bit weird because I kind of like initially I was under the impression that Dora didn't have any romantic interest in the show, and actually like I was kind of like, okay, well that's a bold move. That's kind of an interesting one, but no, like, okay, they're just they're in lesbians together, so yeah, but whatever. That show had its fair share of that as well, so whatever. And then Masters of the Universe Revelation, I'm gonna talk a little. I'm not gonna talk much about that because there the focus really was like, oh, we want to show all the He-Man characters. So, um, yeah, so it was built in, so that flaw is built into the nature of that show. I'm still gonna watch the when the Revolution, is it? Yeah, when Revolution's gonna come out, I'm still gonna watch it. But yeah, that is like that. Just to note that that's the thing that I'm gonna be complaining about when that show comes out because there's too many characters. There's way too many characters. Um, oh yeah, so on the CGI He-Man show, I think they actually did avoid on the villain side. They were actually able to avoid. In fact, I'm a little annoyed that there are so few henchmen that Skeletor has. But at the same time, they've also shown that this version of Skeletor, like his henchmen are like extra disloyal. Like they don't seem to really like working with Skeletor at all. So I guess that makes sense that it's a kind of that it's like a tight group a little bit, but it's also kind of doesn't also make sense. But yeah, the issue is like also on the CGI He-Man show, I get the feeling like they just keep throwing characters randomly at the screen to keep the audience interested. And that's the thing that I kind of get with the Mike Young productions. Again, because I don't want to stress this too much because, like I said, I haven't really rewatched the show. But like, unexpectedly introducing characters is usually a writing crutch used to distract you from the fact that we don't know what we want to do with the story. And that's the thing that I kind of get with the She-Ra's second season as well. And they really only brought the story back to the focus on season 3, 4, and then 4, and then they finally got it on the rails. Ironically, same problem a little bit with there as with the CGI show is that they didn't focus on the villains really at all, which is why we didn't get any Horsemen. And yes, I did throw in that Stratos bit because the CGI show version of Stratos might be my least favorite Stratos now. Like they made him into such a douchebag, and I mean, fine, you can have different takes on characters, but really, like that stings, that hurts because I'm such a Stratos fanboy myself, so that really, really hurts. So I've already kind of alluded to this. So why does the character bloat even like matter? And the problem really is that if you have too many characters, you can't. It causes one of two problems. Either it distracts you from the main characters and the main narrative of the show, and that's not good. Don't get me wrong. I watch a lot of like I watch a lot of like stupid shows, stupid animes, and in anime, it's almost a given that once you get enough supporting characters, the main character actually becomes completely unimportant, and nobody cares what's happening to them. I've seen that happen in multiple shows, but it's also because I kind of watch shows that don't have stakes or narrative, so I'm kind of fine with that. And this is another thing. I kind of recently, I don't usually fantasize about a potential He-Man version because He-Man's got the ball rolling. We're going to have some new He-Man content coming our way for the foreseeable future, I hope. I'm not, like, as much as I complain, I am happy that He-Man has come back in such a big way. I kind of wish now, though, because so many of these shows are trying to have such a serious narrative, now I kind of wish that there would be just like a stupid He-Man and She-Ra split show, like a half-hour show with a 15-minute He-Man and a 15-minute She-Ra segment. And they could do it like in the style of that DC Brave and the Bold, where they would just have dumb adventures. Because that would give them an excuse to just have these dumb characters do cameos, and they could be like very meta, self-conscious, and I wouldn't mind at all. Like, my favorite She-Ra episode, of course, is Sweet Bee's Home, which is the one where Frosta got the hots for He-Man. And I have always wondered, if Teela had ever showed up on She-Ra, would there have been, fireworks, would we have seen like a cat fight between those two? I would have, that is the kind of show format where that kind of stupid story idea would be like perfectly suited. But yeah, so that's the thing. Like that's the thing that I keep running into a problem with the CGI He-Man show. So it's taking the focus away from the main narrative, but it's also like clearly distracting us from the fact like, okay, we don't really know what we want to do with these characters. Like Masters of the Universe Revelation, I'll give it a little bit of credit that there seemed to be like, oh, we want a big bad fight scene in the very final episode. Okay, so that's what it was all building up to. It kind of undermines everything else, but that's that show. I don't want to get into that, but like, so if you want to focus on the narrative, then focus on the main characters. And with villains, it's okay to have like one-offy villains and things like that. That's actually one of my favorite. That was actually one of my favorite things in the CGI animated He-Man show when we just had the random Merman appearance. But it's like Merman was a one-off bad guy. I guess technically not a bad guy, but a sort of a bad guy there. So that's the reason why it matters. Like the live-action He-Man movie, love it or hate it, did have a well-focused narrative. It focused exactly what it wasn't focusing on. It didn't try to overburden us with weird characters. And She-Ra got back on track when they kind of dumped a lot of the unnecessary support cast. And that's the thing. And especially now, when it's very obvious that Mattel is willing to let Netflix and DreamWorks and whoever just tell their own He-Man stories, then, just focus on the stories. You don't have to worry about the toy sales, because that was the thing that was always the hitch in the old days. Like, we have these toy characters, we have to sell them, they have to make money. And right now it seems like no, that we can actually have meaningful stories and characters, and we don't have to focus on that so much. So that was basically the long meandering point that I was trying to get to, is like, if you're going to have a serious story-driven He-Man or She-Ra show, pick a core cast and focus on it. And maybe also give the villains, it's fine to have like a wide villains galore. Just make sure that they get their due as well, because the old adage is that drama, and I personally believe in this, that a hero can only be as mighty as their mightiest adversary. So if all the adversaries are incompetent buffoons, then it kind of kills the drama there as well. Okay, but yeah, that's basically what this short little He-Cast was supposed to be about. Thank you for listening and watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. I don't have any solid plans for a new He-Man episode review. I just brought the She-Ra episode reviews back after a way longer hiatus than I had originally planned. I never actually planned to even go on hiatus. It just kind of happened. But anyway, I still hope you found this. I hope you found this interesting and entertaining at the very least. So I'm Hannes the Hunter Mäkinen. See you on the next one. Bye bye.